I have come here to chew bubblegum and discuss They Live. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Hey freaks and friends, welcome to the 13th entry of the John Carpenter review series. Today we're going to be taking a look at what is possibly John Carpenter's most socially aware film. This is the horror sci-fi action combination that is the 1988 cult classic, They Live. Well, They Live stars Roddy Piper, Keith David, and Meg Foster, and was based off of the 1963 short story 8 O'Clock in the Morning by Ray Nelson. And the screenplay for this one was written by John Carpenter under a pseudonym. This time he went under the name Frank Armitage, and that is a H.P. Lovecraft nod there to the Dunwich Horror. And the H.P. Lovecraft connection will come into play a little more later. Still got a few films before we get there. They Live follows a drifter played by Roddy Piper, who is basically just a guy who's trying to get work honestly and trying to, come up in the world. He believes in the American way, the way it should be. You work to get what you need and you climb from there. But as we can see in his situation, he's not really anywhere. He's not really anybody, which I think is pretty cool when you consider the character's name, Nada. Cool little thing there. His ideal American dream is ultimately shattered though once he comes across a pair of sunglasses that show him the truth. The facade is lifted and he realizes that the world is run by a ruling class of aliens who have more or less sort of invaded, and they've already assumed control, and they use subliminal messages to essentially get the human race to buy this, marry and reproduce, and ultimately obey. Real scary shit. I really do like the story in this film. It's a simple yet very effective story. I like the way it's able to sort of not completely satire, but almost criticize the status quo of that time, which was definitely an interesting period. I wasn't there, but what I've heard from older people, it was definitely an interesting time, and things felt like they were good, but any second it could have turned to shit. That's one thing that makes this film still very relevant, I think. I like the whole consumer culture as much as anybody else. I think we're all just sort of, we hate it, but we have no choice but to deal with it. I mean, you look here, you see that I've sort of fallen victim to the whole consumer thing, but the way this movie pokes at that and plays on the idea that we're not really in charge. We just kind of live here to exist and spend our money to make other people richer. Like, just the way he uses that with the aliens and everything, it's really, some really dark stuff there in a lot of ways. Like, it seems like it's fun, and it is a fun film, but there's a dark underlying tone there, which I think is really cool. That could be a little over-interpreted, but trying to not get too divisive with the political statement that this film is making. Again, the political statement in the film isn't too overbearing or distracting. It really doesn't make it to where you feel like you're being preached to. It does add an element of intrigue to the film at the end of the day, really. And in classic John Carpenter fashion, we are introduced to a world that seems very normal. Again, we have just a guy who's trying to find some honest work so he can make a decent living for himself. And as the film progresses, and it's paced very well, by the way, we come to realize that nothing is normal. Again, when you have aliens sort of running the whole show from behind the scenes in a very covert way, that is the antithesis of normality. Or is it? Who knows? But this one definitely is one of those John Carpenter films where the escalation level is just handled perfectly. It immediately hooks you as soon as you notice Roddy Piper observing the little church across the street from the little homeless camp that he's staying at, and something just doesn't seem right about it. You're immediately intrigued by that. And then you have, at the homeless camp, they also have their TV sets, which are having these interfering signals of somebody talking about, hey, they send all kinds of signals to your brain every day. That whole bit, I think, is really cool. It just sets up this sense of intrigue that makes you really hungry to figure out what the hell is going on in this film, what is going to happen. This is one that definitely, I wish I could have gone into it blind. I had kind of been exposed to it partially in a documentary, The Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue. That's a really interesting documentary too, by the way. The way this film escalates sort of from being normal to a complete crazy shit show at the end of the day, I think is really cool. Again, paced perfectly. Characters in this film are a lot of fun too. Again, you got Roddy Piper as Nada, and his character is sort of left as a pretty blank character in a few ways. It sort of allows us, the viewers, to kind of place ourselves in his shoes, and being that the previous place he worked before he came out here to California in the film, he was in my hometown of Denver, which, shout out to Denver, was a pretty cool little thing there. So, you know, it's like, okay, I feel you. He's just a really fun character. He's got the one-liners. He, again, becomes very disillusioned once he sort of realizes the truth there. He wants to believe in the American dream being something completely pure and wholesome, only to find out that, no, you've been lied to the whole time. So that sort of feeling when you come to the realization that the American dream in the classic sense doesn't really exist anymore, I think is really intriguing, and it makes him a much more identifiable character because a lot of people definitely get that feeling. And Keith David as Frank is another character I really enjoy. He's trying to stay practical, but he definitely feels that there is sort of a reason to be disillusioned with the whole status quo, but he's still just under the impression that, oh, it's just a bunch of greedy rich assholes. He's half right. He's the skeptic sort of once Roddy Piper comes back to him after he goes off and does the little discovery scene with the glasses and shoots up at the bank and everything. That whole crazy bit, that was a lot of fun there. But when he goes back to meet up with Frank is naturally skeptical, like, hey dude, you're fucking crazy, stay away from me. And that leads to one of the funnest moments in the film, which is the little brawl in the alley. That sequence is a lot of fun. It's pretty ridiculous, but there's a lot of realness to it. Like, the way they're fighting it's not one of those over-the-top 80s action fights like you would expect in something like Commando or something like that, you know? It's just two guys beating the crap out of each other. Every hit, you see them actually reacting like, oh, fuck, that hurts. I love that bit too when Roddy picks up the 2x4 and goes to swing it at him and takes out the back windshield on that car. And that look on his face when he realizes, oh my god, I could have really hurt you really bad there. And then Keith David goes and breaks the bottle, but he breaks it more than he wanted to. That was just a nice fun little bit to sort of reset the audience during that scene, because it's already going on for quite a bit. And it's one of those things, it's just, it doesn't feel like you're sitting there for 5 minutes, honestly, watching that whole fight. That was a little bit of a side tangent, but that was fun. Holly, played by Meg Foster, was a character that I liked. I liked the character's purpose in the film, where we find out that she is one of the humans who is in cahoots sort of with the aliens there. That is an interesting angle for her character. I only wish that she had actually had a bit more charisma in the film. She seems like a very wooden sort of actress at this point. Like, I don't know, she just doesn't seem like she's interested in being there. I don't know if it's how she was directed to play the character, but I think it is interesting though, just how you have that, you think she's somebody who was doubtful, who ends up believing it after the fact. No, you realize that she is involved with this whole thing. And it really makes it a lot more interesting on rewatch too, because it sort of explains her level of calmness when she seems to be being kidnapped by Roddy Piper when he's trying to escape from the law there. I don't know, the moment when she makes the phone call after she throws him out the window of her house, which is like up in the hills or whatever. Is that what that part of California is called? If there's anybody in California watching this. Is that the hills? I don't know. But when she throws him out the window and ends up being on the phone, like, you don't know who she's on the phone with. She's still calm the whole time. It definitely kind of makes it not so surprising when we realize her true nature. There's definitely a lot of things that sort of give away where her intentions lie. Another character I want to touch on, of course, is George Buckflower's character in here, and I totally don't remember if they even say his name in this film or not. But he starts off as one of the homeless guys. It looks like that fry cook job didn't work out for him in Starman. So he's starting down at the bottom again. And when the police, who are, you know, sort of the army of the alien race, when they come in and break up the homeless camp, you see him just sort of kind of slowly backing up. And he sort of disappears from the movie for the next hour or so. And you find out that he has also decided to become a collaborator with the aliens. George Buckflower is looking so un-George Buckflower at this point. Like, he's got the tuxedo on and everything, and
hey fellas,
like, he's finally doing good. He might be able to finally get his little girl through college. You're kind of rooting for him, but you realize, dude, you totally sold us out. To which he says,
No, you gotta listen to me. I thought you boys understood. It's business. That's all it is. What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
But yeah, his character's fun, and it shows kind of the upsetting nature of people that you don't want to believe that some people have, where they could be down, they could be your friends for the longest time, someone that you feel like you can trust, only to find out that they're really just a prick and a turncoat at the end of the day. It's a fact that some people are just, they fucking flip like that. I think the whole idea of the subliminal messages in the film too is really cool, and being that they have these specially manufactured sunglasses that they can see the reality through, I think that's really cool. And I like how, like, right before the third act, they switch them out for contact lenses, which just came in today. It definitely served, I think, a practical plot purpose, but I think really it was probably just a behind the scenes thing where, yeah, some of these night scenes are going to be easier without sunglasses, so let's get rid of that. The action throughout the whole film too is a lot of fun. Of course, I already mentioned the 6-minute alley brawl, but the third act is really crazy too, because right when you think that the good guys, the resistance, are about to find a way to strike the alien leaders, boom! Their fortress and meeting is assaulted, and they pretty much kill everybody there, and you just got everybody freaking dying, everybody's running. Like, some people I'm sure get away, but they definitely put a kink in the plan there. One thing I like real quick is the whole fact that the gunfight, like the whole chase in the alley where they're shooting at the cops who are also aliens, when they're shooting at those guys and they're shooting at them, you almost think that, hey, the movie's going to wrap up here during this fight possibly, but it doesn't. And the resolution just kind of slows down. It eases up a little bit, which I thought was an interesting way to sort of subvert the whole action-y expectations that this film probably had at this point for first-time viewers. I know I was definitely expecting it to be a lot more heavy-handed on the action there, not to slow down as much as it did. But that is until Keith David and Roddy Piper end up using one of the little alien teleporting watches to find a way to teleport to the headquarters of the aliens, which is really interesting. It was It was cool that they had already established the watch as being a teleporting device. Otherwise, that would have been the stupidest fucking thing on the planet. This planet, anyway. Of course, they are able to infiltrate the TV studio and get access to the roof, which is where the little satellite is that sort of manipulates the imagery and the appearance of the aliens. Roddy Piper is able to destroy that, but that's not before Meg Foster kills Keith David, which was absolutely upsetting. It kind of took me by surprise the first time I watched it, but hindsight's 20/20. You could tell her character's fucking crazy. When Roddy Piper is up there on the roof, you know, she's telling him, dude, you're fighting a losing battle. Just give up at this point, seriously. But that's not enough, you know, he ends up taking her out, and a helicopter comes up, takes him out, but he's able to still take out the satellite. And it's kind of a dark ending because our hero dies, but he is able to succeed. And I thought that was really cool there. And I like how there is almost no true resolution to the film. Like, we see that everyone is able to see the aliens with their own eyes now. Like, you got people at the bar are able to see that, hey, the person next to him's a ghoul. You can see the ghouls on TV. You have the Siskel and Ebert bit playing on TV, actually, where they're talking about...
All the sex and violence on the screen has gone too far for me. I'm fed up with it. Filmmakers like George Romero and John Carpenter have to show some restraint.
But it doesn't really give us a whole lot of full-on resolution. It just sort of ends there, and I thought that was a fun way to end it. It's like, alright, so now we just got to figure out how to put this whole fucking... resolve this whole mess. I thought that was a cool little touch. Let's take a look real quick at the Carpenter collaborators. We've got Keith David making his second and final appearance here. We have Peter Jason making his second appearance, but he's still got quite a few more to go. He plays Gilbert, the sort of leader of the little resistance in the church there, or he seems to be like the leader of a particular cell of the resistance anyway. We have George Buckflower back. This is his fourth appearance in the John Carpenter film. Again, he's fun to see as always. We also have Jeff Imada and Al Leong both making their second appearances here, previously seen in Big Trouble in Little China. We see Al Leong very briefly in the gunfight at the beginning of the third act there. We just see him kind of coming in and out of one of the little cutaways in the alley there. And Jeff Imada, I'm not sure exactly where to see him. I couldn't really pinpoint him in here. But it is worth mentioning that he is the stunt coordinator in this film. And he did a great job with that. So I will give him credit there for the work that he put into the film. And there's also Susan Blanchard, who was in Prince of Darkness, which I neglected to mention because I didn't think she was going to be returning here. So Susan Blanchard's making her second appearance. And while we're here, I'll mention a John Carpenter cameo. I probably should have been a little more persistent with this as we've been going through here. Or maybe I have been a little persistent with that. You guys tell me, have I been following up with Carpenter's cameos? Anyway, John Carpenter's cameo in this film is basically the sleep voice that is playing from some of the little radar systems when we see the world through the sunglasses. And it's just kind of a distorted version of his voice, so that was pretty cool. So at the end of the day, guys, They Live is a film that I think is a lot of fun. It's definitely a riveting film. It's very well paced. It's got a message in the film that makes it as socially relevant as it was when it was released, if not more today than it was before. And again, the political theme in the film isn't too strong to where it hits you over the head, but it is present enough to where you will pick up on that. And I think that is pretty cool. It's one that can be easily understood, and it's somehow not too divisive, which is really great because it doesn't feel like there's a specific agenda being pushed onto us, which I know is something that definitely gets a lot of backlash today. But this is definitely one that's worth checking out. It's, I think, a really important film, but again, it's a fun film on top of that. So it's important, fun, it's a Carpenter. Check it out. So with all that out of the way, guys, They Live gets 4.5 comically long fist fights out of 5. As always, guys, thank you all for watching. Please be sure to play with the icons down there, give it a thumbs up and all that fun stuff. Hit that bell so you don't miss out on the next video. The Carpenter series is going to be on a short pause while I get ready to do some stuff in preparation for the October month. I got some other little one-off stuff that I'm probably going to try and get done before that too, so that there's still content coming out. Looking forward to seeing you guys again.